Because your parents are Greek?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
They both came over. I can say now that they were both illegal immigrants. My father was naturalized in 1956 when I was born. He was scheduled to be deported, and he was stayed. His deportation was stayed after, as a result of an act of Congress in the 50s. And so and then my mother came in the mid-50s. And
so you were born in Greece or you were born here?
I was born here. I was born in Tarboro, North Carolina.
And how did your parents end up in North Carolina?
My aunt and my uncle, who were older than my dad was the 14th child, and his oldest brother and an older sister. The brother lived in Tarboro and ran a small cafe, and my aunt lived in Rocky Mount, and with her husband also ran a small cafe.
Were they Greek cafes?
No, they were American.
And do you feel connected to your Greek roots?
Somewhat. My parents were very committed to us being completely assimilated. And so, I grew up speaking Greek. We didn't go to Greek church. I was raised Episcopalian. So, and we didn't speak Greek outside the home, which is very different than it is today.
Sure, like you're like Greek Orthodox Church and break school and all that. And did your sons do any of that?
No.
So, and you grew up in Tarboro, in that part of the state, so deep North Carolina roots. Can you tell me a little bit about your law beginnings? Like, what made you decide to become an attorney? And tell us a little about law school.
I had thought about becoming an attorney, I guess, at some point, because people would say, "Oh, you like to argue, you should be, you should be an attorney." And but I wasn't certain really what I was going to do. And then when I was in high school, I'm not sure exactly how this happened, but I went with a group and we were in juvenile court. And I saw a young Black kid be sent to reform school for stealing a quarter. And I thought that was just eminently unfair. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. And so at that point I thought, maybe I should become a lawyer. Maybe I should, become like a criminal defense lawyer. That was in the days of Perry Mason. People may not remember Perry Mason. And I thought, well, I could do that, I think. And so that's kind of where I started, where that sort of kernel started.
And tell us about your law school experience. How was it for you?
I was not a fan of law school. We were a small class of women. We weren't very large. It's not like it is today where it's like 50% or more women. We were the minority. And there was a lot of expectation about going into the corporate world. There was some suspicion, I think, even in that day, this was in the late 70s, early 80s, that you really weren't serious, that you weren't going to be a career-minded and stay as being a lawyer. And I actually, when I did my character and fitness interview in actually Rocky Mount at a small firm there, they questioned my commitment to being a lawyer and asked me what I was going to do when I got married or when I had a child. So things that were clearly inappropriate, but, that was the way it was in those days.
Do you think you and the other women who were your classmates, did you have to work harder? Did you have more to prove?
I always thought I did. I don't know whether I really did or not, but I always thought I did, and I think we all did. It was just that time.
Do you feel like when you see the women now who are practicing, and we have like our wildy women and people who are just coming out of school, and what do you see when you see them that's different from you?
I see a level of confidence and expectation that I didn't have. and I'm glad to see it. It's quite frankly inspiring to see it, and to recognize that, you know, times have changed and things are better. Not 100%, of course, but there's that movement that has occurred, and I think it's a good thing because I think it benefits men too.
So, talk as you were just talking about your first interview and all that. So, tell us your career path and describe your career path and the type of law you practice.
Well, I was going to be a criminal defense attorney, and so when I was in law school, I did like prisoner rights work. I was very engaged in, taking criminal procedure and all that sort of stuff. And then when I was after my second year of law school, this was the only interview I did on campus at the law school. I interviewed with Alabama Legal Services, sort of as a lark, and they hired me. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, I've never lived outside of North Carolina. It would be interesting to see what it's like in Alabama. And it's just for the summer, I said to myself. And so I drove down and clerked in a small office called Opelika. It was in Opelika. It was, outside Auburn. And I loved it. I lived with one of the attorneys, and she lived out, I thought, in the middle of nowhere. And I just loved the work. I loved the clients. I felt how lucky I was there and able to, get somebody food stamps or make a call, or help them navigate something that was bad and that had befallen them. And we weren't always successful, of course, but it was good work. It was rewarding. And even with my Southern accent, they thought I was from New York, which I still remember and think that always made me laugh.
So they thought, was your accent from Tarboro, North Carolina?
And the way I look.
They
thought I was from New York.
Funny. Yeah. That's so funny. Okay, so after that, so obviously that got you into public service, and tell us about that.
I wasn't able, it was back in 82, I wasn't able to get a job. And so I started just doing, hung out my shingles, so to speak, and represented a few people, some in criminal court. I did a guardianship, which I'd never done before, but I did it. And that was, as a result of somebody that I literally met in the grocery store. It was very weird. But I represented him to get guardianship over his mentally disabled brother. And this was in Orange County, and in the old Hillsborough courthouse, which was really kind of neat. Then I started sort of doing contract work for another attorney, and then I was sort of looking for a job in the Triangle, which was always very difficult, even in those days. And I got hired at what was then East Central Community Legal Services by Greg Malhoit and Victor Boone. I was a contract attorney for, Carol Spool was out on maternity leave. And so I was her fill-in while she was gone, and had no idea that I was going to be able to stay as long as I have. This makes my 42nd year as a legal aid lawyer.
And what does it mean for you to have that number of years with legal aid?
Surprising. Most people don't stay in one place for very long anymore. I can't think of many of my colleagues, classmates that I went to law school with who are still in the same firm. I can actually think of only one. And so I just, when you find your spot, when you find your career and you find good people to work with, good work, clients that make it special, it's easy to stay.
Do you stay because of that? You feel you're making a difference?
I always feel like I'm making a difference. If you've gone to law school, put in that time, that commitment, and you want to make a difference. Why are we here without? That's what we're here to be able to do. That's in that kind of like life. Um, so yeah, I feel like I have made a difference. I feel like I'm still making a difference. And I hope I'll be able to continue to make a difference, until I'm not here anymore. Yeah.
So talk to me about we know you've been in the same spot, but you've obviously seen changes. What have been the most significant changes in the legal profession over the course of your career and in the legal community in Wake County? What have you seen?
I mean, the obvious is the technology. That that is the elephant in the room. I mean, when I started, wrote things on long legal pads, the 14-inch legal pads. I handed them to somebody else who typed them. Any edits, I gave them back. And then, I moved up to dictation, which was a big, time saver. So I could dictate on those little mini recorders. I don't know if people remember those little teeny mini recorders. And then I would give my little tape to a secretary, a typist, and they would type it and give it back. The same thing, same process, but I was dictating. And now, then we got a computer. And, we got a case management system within the computer. We no longer had little index cards with our client names on them, no spreadsheets. It was all computer generated. And now, you've got AI in your legal research. It can create documents for you. It can, create a legal memorandum for you. I mean, it's just quite amazing to me that this is all here. But one thing that has stayed consistent, you still have to use your judgment. AI doesn't go to court with you. AI doesn't interact with other human beings. AI is really a tool, just much like, carbon paper was before my day. People remember what carbon paper is. And, the dictaphone or the dictation, the mini recorder that I had, and then the big computer with the whole thing, the big system that you had. It makes the work maybe easier, but it doesn't take the place of the judgment, your interactions with other people, because that's really what the law is about. It's not just paper. It's not just a face on a screen or a voice on a phone call. It's very personal.
Speaking of personal, tell us about what role has mentorship played for you in your career, both as a mentor and a mentee?
I was lucky that I worked at East Central and I had, people to show me the way, and to set the expectation. So I just modeled myself after the people I was working with. And luckily they were all, stellar attorneys, good people, and they were very open to give me opportunities and expose me to, like we were doing class actions in those days. And so, Greg let me co-counsel. I was sort of tagged along on the first one. And then I was, doing class actions. I was doing, so having those opportunities, and having the work shared, in a way that allowed me to sometimes make mistakes. I could say the same thing about Victor Boone. He was also, I know he's mentored a number of people, and he's like an amazing attorney, amazing person. And, if you can be like Vic, then, that's pretty good. And so aspiring to be like the people that you worked with. So the key was I got lucky that I was working with some amazing lawyers. I mean, the people that I can call to mind that are still here in Wake County are obviously Greg Malhoit. He was the executive director. Victor Boone was my supervisor, managing attorney at the time. Carol Sproul, another amazing attorney. And so if you just, I hate to say it, but, imitate the people you are around and they're good people, then I think you turn out pretty good.
And do you feel you got to be a mentee to others? Would others consider you their mentor?
I think so, but I'm not sure quite why. I'm just my focus is on doing the best work we can do and making sure that our clients are represented and our reputation stays intact, and we're good lawyers.
So tell me about, you touched on it a little bit, but about what made you start but ethical dilemmas. What have been some of the most challenging ethical dilemmas you faced in your career, and how did you navigate those?
I think times when your client hasn't told you the truth and you've relied on that information and presented it either to the court or to opposing counsel. Those have been, I think, the most frequent situations where I've had some ethical dilemmas. It's the best way I dealt with those was I just admitted the error and tried to do it without damaging the client, the case, and revealing a confidence that I'm obligated to keep sacred. And sometimes it was hard. Sometimes I had to withdraw from representing a client when we could not agree on the approach I thought we had to take to remedy something that was not entirely accurate.
And what would you tell a new lawyer coming up about those ethical dilemmas and ethics in law?
I would tell you got to be honest. Got to be honest and truthful. And if you're not, we can always characterize situations to make them fit the legal issue, right? I mean, people call it a spin, people call it, advocacy. But at the end of the day, you've got to be truthful and you've got to be honest. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're going to have a tough time in this profession and your reputation will suffer tremendously. We all know who we can rely on. We all know whose word is their bond, or whose word is their bond sometimes. And that, I think, is the fundamental characteristic and fundamental factor that you must have as a lawyer.
Tell us about, through the years, your life outside the law.
Well, I got married in my early 30s. We had 2 sons. I was what they call an older mother. My husband, frankly, bore the brunt of taking care of the children a lot of times because I was not in town. I lived in Chapel Hill. I worked in Raleigh. And, 40 was always an issue driving. And so if somebody needed to, get something picked up early from school or school let out because of snow or whatever the issues were, he was the primary parent to step up and make sure the boys, we still call them boys even though they're in their 30s now, were said to make sure they were taken care of. So if somebody forgot something, he was the one who took it, that kind of thing. So I was very grateful for my husband.
And your interests and your hobbies outside the law, was that important to you?
I didn't have a lot of, I hate to say this, but I didn't have a lot of time when you're working full time and you've got 2 children, and it's hard to juggle all that. And so I didn't have a lot of time. The thing that I've always loved to do is cook. And in my family, we call it the cooking gene because my dad, cooked in the cafe that he and my mother ran. And so my two sons have the cooking gene and they like to cook. But I'm primarily a baker.
And what does that do for you to have that hobby, that escape?
It's creative. It lets you not think about other people's problems, which is what you have to do if you're a lawyer and you need to solve their problem. You need to solve the client's problem. So you're thinking about that a lot. So it's a creative outlet. It lets you use your hands. There's nothing like kneading bread to get tension out. I'll just say that. And it's kind of fun. And then you get to eat it. And so that's even more fun.
And for you, where do you see the future of the legal community in North Carolina and in Lake County going?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. We've got a lot more lawyers. I'm curious to see what the expectation is of the newer lawyers. I know the expectation seems to be that they want more work, what they call work-life balance, which I've always sort of wondered what that really means. And so I don't really know what the future is going to look like. I think it's going to change significantly. There's a lot of more pro se people engaged. AI creates their, pleadings, their memos, or whatever it is that they want to file. So I think there's more of a litigiousness, especially with dealing with pro se litigants.
And you mentioned when we first started talking that you were born in 1956. So I take it that you have a big birthday this year, and you just shared some great news about your family. What's next for you personally and professionally?
Well, I'm going to be retiring at the end of this year, and we're expecting our first grandson. So, in less than a month now, and so I'm looking forward to a new phase of my life, and it's pretty exciting to me. I'm going to continue practicing, volunteering with legal aid, doing pro bono cases, because that's part of what I miss. Having, being in management, I miss being what I think of as a real lawyer, representing clients, going to court. So that's the professional end of what I'm going to be doing, but that's going to be significantly scaled down. The people who know me that know I work a lot. I guess, should I confess on this thing? I'm basically, I'll confess, I'm a workaholic. I love to work. I love to stay busy. So I plan to do that when I retire.
And last question for you. We've seen you at swearing-in ceremonies with all these new attorneys and you're sponsored by these new attorneys. What's going through your mind when you watch this new crop of attorneys? What do you want them to know?
I want them to love the law. And I hope that they, either are there and feel that already, or will, develop that love, that passion for being a lawyer as they develop professionally and spread their wings. That's what I hope.